Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for Module 3, Anatomy of an Episode. In this module, we're going to take a closer look at how to create an episode using AI animation. I'm going to show you a couple examples of projects that I created in LumaFusion. Again, you can use whatever video editor you prefer, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at LumaFusion, and this will give you an idea of what you can do as well. This first example I'll show you is really quite simple, really quite straightforward, and we'll just take a look at what I did here and how I was able to create this episode. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look at this.
Now, just how did you become a double O, Mr. Bailey?
Well, it was really just a matter of stepping in to help the other double O out. The poor chap was terribly overworked.
Overworked, you say?
Oh yes, dreadfully overworked. You know, so many villains to chase, long lines at the airport, security checks, and then that other little problem.
So that's just a little bit of a taste there so that you have an idea. And basically, you know, this entire thing is really quite straightforward. It's just two people at a coffee shop having a conversation. And so with the lip sync here, there's a couple things going on. Now, first off, I'll let you know that this is the first thing that I did as far as AI animation went. And my goal here was to really go as simple as possible. And I think it's a good place to start because if you're getting into AI animation for the first time, you don't necessarily need to be bogged down with a ton of details. So I'm just going to show you here. If we just go back, you could see for yourself that this is just these two people having a conversation and it's going back and forth. And then you can see here that the editing is really quite straightforward. Now, the main thing to be concerned with here as far as the editing goes, if you're doing something similar, is to make sure that all of your cuts are in line with what the actor is saying. And I did a couple things here as far as the lip sync goes. So with our female character, the lip sync is actually just, it's very straightforward. I didn't actually use a lip sync generator. You can use lip sync generators. Hedra is a great one. We'll take a closer look at that in a future module. But as far as this one goes, what I did was I just put in for my prompt, I just put in the character is talking. And in this case, we got some pretty good lip movement from the AI video generator. And so I was able to just match that up with the voice actress and it turned out pretty good. I think. Now, you know, it's rudimentary, but as far as achieving its goal, it did do that. And it was up to me to basically make sure that I edited it as cleanly as possible so that her lips always moved with the audio. Now with the male character, I did use lip sync, and in this case, I used Runway. I used the Runway lip sync. So that's one way that you can go about doing your lip sync. Runway is a good has a good option. Kling AI has a good option. But right now, if there is a platform that I would recommend as far as lip sync goes, it's got to be Hedra. Hedra right now, they do really good lip sync and they also have very reasonable pricing. I found with Runway, it did a great job, but it is somewhat limited in terms of its emotion. Now, Runway Act 1, that's a completely different topic that we can get into. But with Runway Act 1, essentially, you can just take your own performance and you can overlay the AI animation on top of it. So this is a different way of getting lip sync, and it's actually very effective. So you can have a more authentic performance, a more specific performance. Whereas with Hedra, you definitely get a lot of emotion, and they have just put out a new model where you can really dial things in. But you're going to have to deal with whatever it is that the AI generator does. Runway, their lip sync, last time I checked anyways, I mean, this stuff, improves all the time, but last time I checked was pretty straightforward, but it did a good job. And then also Pika does do lip sync as well. And last time I checked, their lip sync, it does the job, but it's not the greatest. I would kind of put Pika sort of down at the bottom of the pile, followed by Runway, followed by Kling and Hedra. Kling is actually really good with the lip sync. With lip sync, you're always going to have to deal with the limitations of the technology itself. It's not necessarily always going to turn out the way that you want it to. But with Kling, you can get more movement out of the character. Now you do have to be careful sometimes, because sometimes the lip sync just doesn't work out. You can try your best. You can get your movement in there, but you're going to want to make sure that the face is as close to the camera as possible, as clear in the camera as possible. And then from there, it's a bit of a roll of the dice. But this is another way that you can do it. It depends on what it is that you're doing. Like if you're doing a kind of a fun little comedy sketch for social media or something like that, then you don't, in my opinion, you don't necessarily need to go super crazy with the lip sync. You could do something that I did here, which I just basically put into my prompt that I wanted the character's lips to be moving. And in this case, I got some really nice lip movement from the character. And then from there, all I did was I just recycled the footage over and over again. And, that's where there's a little bit of magic with the editing to try to make sure that it's not overly repetitive. But in this case, because we just have like a simple comedy sketch here and we have the two characters talking, then it doesn't have to be very complicated, I think. Again, it depends on what it is that you're doing. But in this case, we have a short little comedy sketch with our two characters talking. And the main concern that I had with this was to try to get a background that worked. So you can see here with the background, there's a little bit of a difference between the backgrounds, but I tried to choose a background for both characters that was as close as possible so that it seems as though they're in the same scene. So you could play around with this, how it is that you want to achieve this. You can go very rudimentary, which is what I did here, or you can really think it through and there's a lot that you can do to pull the quality out as much as possible. But again, with this, all we're doing is we're trying to do something that's as straightforward and simple as possible. And then something that I did here at the beginning was, so I put together this little intro, and we got some establishing shots here that I did with the animation as well. So, kind of establishes that we're in London, and now we have our characters and they're chit-chatting, and that's basically the entirety of the episode. It's just these two characters talking to each other. And then at the end, we've got our credits, and very simple, very straightforward, but this gives you an idea of what you can do as well. So if you're looking to do something just very simple, this is a good example. Let's go ahead and take a look at something that's a little bit more advanced. So we'll go ahead and I think it's this one up here that we want to go with. Here we go. Okay. So this one, you could see is much more involved than that one was. And this is partly because there's a lot more going on in this episode, but also because I had learned quite a bit by this point. But it's still very straightforward, very simplistic, but there's a lot more going on in this episode for sure. So let's just take a quick look. Okay. We'll start from here.
To have a showdown to see who has the best vacuum cleaner. I challenged him to go bagless. That's right. He thinks his old canister vacuum can beat our bagless machine. He told me to meet him inside the bar. Now, if you could just contact Nala for me and tell her I'll be home early next week. Thanks. Yes, I'll see you then.
Get on back, Mr. Bailey. Quick, quick.
Who are you?
My name, Joyride, Mr. Bailey. You're very lucky I saved you from Red Dirt Dragon.
What do you know about the Red Dirt Dragon, Joyride?
We talk later, Mr. Bailey. Right now, I must get away from black cars following us. You see behind?
Yes, there is a black car that seems to be following us. Who are they?
Those men are part of Red Dirt Dragon's crew.
Oh, are they vacuum salesmen?
No, Mr. Bailey. They're Red Dirt Dragon's exterminators. I think they want to kill you.
Kill me? Why on earth would they want to kill me?
I tell you everything once we get to a safe place. Now hold on tight, Mr. Bailey. I must get us away from them.
Okay. So that's just a little bit of an example there. There's a little bit more action going on here. And there's also some more involved techniques that are happening. Again, this is still very simple. There's a lot more that can be done. But I mean, as far as the editing goes and the sets, the characters, making sure that we know exactly what's going on and who's who. And we've got a little bit of action going on here with the car chase. And in this case, what I did was I used a green screen effect to have the characters on the bike and to have the kind of light streaks going on behind them to give us the idea that we're moving quickly at this point. Now, this is semi-unfinished. There's a few things that needed to be done, like having the tire spin, and all of this is an example of the challenges that you might encounter when doing something like this. Now, with the cars chasing, I was able to get some pretty decent stuff, and it's fairly consistent. But with the tires spinning, that was where I needed to take some more time to use what's called a motion brush. So if you are familiar with Runway, Kling has it as well. There's a couple of different platforms that have motion brush now. And with the motion brush, what you can do is you can target a specific section of your image in order to identify that it needs motion. So that's something that we could have done here with the tire, but we kind of ran out of time. So this was just very straightforward. And again, when it comes to doing something animated, it really is up to you how involved you want to get. With something like this where it's comedy and it's more rudimentary, but there's something about that I think works within the style that we're establishing here. We're not doing anything, this is a quick under 10-minute episode, and so it's not really that necessary to have the highest quality production, but that's really up to you. And this is where it's a matter of time. So if you want to spend the time to go through all of this and really make sure that everything is as quality as possible, as tight as possible, then you can do that. But Also, it depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to make a funny little comedy short for YouTube or TikTok or something like that, I mean, there's plenty of examples of stuff out there that has very low quality. I mean, look at something like South Park, for example, right? You don't need the highest quality production in order to sell comedy or animation or something like that. So, I mean, it's really up to you how it is that you are creating your project. But with something like this, you can at least see for yourself everything that goes into creating the episode. So we have our opening titles, we have our establishing shots, basically selling the fact that here we are in Thailand, and we have our villains, we have our hero with his vacuum cleaner, and we've got a little bit of action here. So we've got this guy with his gun. Okay, he's shooting the gun, and then turns out that it's actually this woman shooting the gun. And now the chase is on. We're running away. And now we're cutting into, I'm missing some footage right here, but that's fine. We're cutting to our next scene, and now we have a new character here.
How you know I am trouble, master?
Very easy to tell, Catnapper. Your face become twisted like small animal who has been stung by scorpion.
Am I so easy to read, master?
Yes, Beanstalker. Now tell me quickly before another sun sets and moon rises. What?
So this was a nice image I was able to get, and this is kind of an example of, like, you try different things out and you with the AI, you try to dial it in as much as possible. So in this case, we got our big boss character, and he's got his drink and he's chit-chatting with his servant type, his number one, and they're having a little conversation here, and we're just moving on. So here we go. We've got a little bit of action here, passing the key. So this is all very straightforward, but this gives you an idea of what is necessary in order to achieve this. So here's a good example here to show you how something works here. So what I did was I have the character, and I needed to have her in the scene here. So this was a technique that I employed quite a bit, which is using green screen. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and show you how this works. So we're going to do an edit on this here. I'm going to go to my green screen. And there you go. Now the green has disappeared. And basically what ended up happening here was we had the character in the scene, but the model for the character wasn't working. So I had to superimpose this character on top. And you can see here, we'll just kind of move her over there so that we can cover the other model up. And there you go. Now we have brought our secondary character into the scene. And there is this is an unfinished version of this project. I do have a finalized version of the project, but you can see for yourself that there is a little bit of green kind of hanging out there. And that's just because I had to go through and I had to do a little bit of adjustments with the Sketchpad program that I was using. But at the very least, this gives you an idea of what is possible and how you would achieve something like this with the green screen. And this is something that you're going to have to get familiar with the editor that you're using. You don't have to use a green screen effect, but this was something that I found that sometimes it was too much of a challenge to get the character consistency that I wanted, or I had a nice shot like this that I really liked, but then the model of the character in the scene wasn't really working the way that I wanted it to. And so what I had to do was I had to go into my sketchpad. I was using, I guess it's Sketchbook for iPad, and also a background remover. So I would use a background remover to put my character in with a green background, and then I would bring that in, and then using the green screen here. So I'll show you again in LumaFusion. This is how this works: is we have our keyers and we have our green screen key, and so I was able to use that in order to, let's see if we. That's still working. That's fine. So that just gives you an idea there. You have to select the specific one that says green screen, but you have a blue screen key and you have an ocean key, a blue sky key, but green screen is the most common one to use. So that's the one that we're using here. And actually that seems to have fixed the, there was a little bit of green kind of hanging around a little bit there. So it seems as though just kind of going back and forth on that kind of dealt with that. So, you know, that's kind of the weirdness that you find sometimes with playing around with editing. Sometimes you get strange results and they're not necessarily desirable ones. So in this case, for some reason, I was getting the kind of green edges there, and looks like just kind of going back and forth cleared that up. So it wasn't quite grabbing it the right way, the editor itself. But this is how it works in LumaFusion. You can find similar options in DaVinci Resolve. I'm not entirely sure about CapCut. That's something that you'll have to do your research on. And again, it kind of depends on whether or not you employ the same the same techniques that I did. So green screen is something that you can do. It's something that I do, and we will go into that a little bit further in future modules. But this is just to give you an idea of how an entire episode works out. So there you go. So that's what it looks like with the green screen. And then if I turn that off, then this is what it ends up looking like. Yeah. So this is our full episode, and we'll give you an idea of everything that you can do in order to create your own AI animated episode. We'll take a look at one more example. And this is an example with a little bit more realistic characters, and the lip sync was a little bit better as well. Is this the right one? Yeah. Okay. So in this one, we used a more live action style for the characters with the AI generated images. We went with a not an animated quality, but more of a live action quality. And we also used Hedra for the lip sync. So I'll give you a bit of an example there of what that looks like.
This is your captain speaking. This is a red alert. We are under attack by the trolls. Battle stations, everyone.
Okay, so this was done using Hedra for the lip sync, and this will give you an idea of what Hedra is capable of. And Hedra is capable of a lot more emotion in the performances. We'll just take a look at that again.
Just in time, Screwloose. They are coming in hard and fast. Damage report.
Everything is holding together in engineering, Captain.
How are the shields, Screwloose?
Some damages to the F's shields, Captain, but the
Okay, so similar idea here. So you can see this is everything that went into this episode. And the thing is with Hedra, and they have updated their model since I first used it, but with Hedra, you really have to have your character centered as much as possible in order to get the lip sync looking proper. And that was a little bit of a challenge in this regard, because what I ended up having to do was I did employ a little bit of green screen to make it work. But what I actually had to do in some instances was I actually had to have the video, which was in a square format. And so, for example, in this shot here, the video actually is only a square. It sort of only encompasses kind of the middle part of the video here. The edges were actually done by taking the still image and just putting that behind the video. So that way I can extend the edges and have a little bit, you could see more of what's going on the sides. And so we kind of have the full sheen, the full sized cinematic 16:9 aspect ratio. Since I did this, I believe that Hedra has now given you the option to be able to export in a 16:9 aspect ratio. So this is an example of the limitation that I had to deal with at the time. And you can actually even see here on the right hand side, if you see his arm is kind of getting cut off there a little bit. And that's because that's as much as I could get with the video editing. So now one thing that you might be able to do, depending on how it is that you want to do your videos, it is quite common now for people to create in an aspect ratio for the phone. So if you are doing something for social media and you are thinking about things more so for people's phones, then you don't necessarily have to do a widescreen format. You could do you could do like a square format, or you could just try to do the format that's more appropriate for a phone. But there's little challenges that you're going to find that can only be accomplished by moving outside of your video editor and also moving outside of the video generator, because you might find that there are certain limitations that don't allow you to get the result that you're looking for. So in that case, that's where you're going to have to go into something like Photoshop, or in my case, I used Sketchbook and Procreate. And that's where I had to kind of do a little bit of, painting and as I said before with the green screen, I had to use a background remover and then change the background to green, so that way I could use the green screen effect to get my characters in certain scenes. And that was something that I used as time went on. I did that more often, where I would just have my set. I would have my set in the background, and then I would just superimpose the character in there using the green screen effect. And so that became an easy way of being able to have character consistency, because I could use the same character model and I could just put that same character in different situations. And again, with this that we're looking at here, this is very straightforward comedy style, not a lot of action necessarily. There were some action scenes, and for those, that was always needed to be handled, in certain ways. So like, I'll give you an example here.
Damage report.
Only my...
So, very straightforward. In fact, I think I replaced this shot, but this kind of gives you an idea of, okay, we're getting a little bit of action in the scene now. So I had to use the video generator to, okay, let me generate some torpedoes being launched. And then let's see an image of the alien ship that's firing at us, just to sell the idea that there's some action going on here. So, and here's another thing we did, like the view screen, and I basically just had to put the image. I had to here, we'll show you here how this works. So I basically just had to like put one image on top of the other, and then you can see here that I just made it fit so that it fit within the view screen. So that was something that I did for that. And this is kind of where you're going to encounter certain challenges along the way, depending on what it is that you're doing. You can try to depend on the video editor to get away with as much as possible. And quite honestly, the video editors have gotten a lot better since I first did this episode. But again, if you're doing something simple, then you might not necessarily need over-the-top action that some of the video editors are capable of now. But, that being said, it's up to you to play around with it, to try out different things to see what works for you. And you can do something very simple, as I'm showing you here. This is a little bit more complex than the first one that I was showing you, but you could see here for yourself, it's a lot of talking heads, characters just kind of having their the camera cut to them, and we're seeing their dialogue, but it's for something that's an animated comedy show, this worked for that. But there's a lot of techniques that I used here that I wouldn't necessarily use again, but that's just because the lip sync has gotten better, the video the video generators have gotten better, but if you are looking to do something as straightforward as possible and you don't want to have to fuss around with trying to dial things in, and also getting the right result from the video generator, which can be costly, having to redo multiple generations, then sometimes you just have to get inventive. And that's basically what I did here. So we'll go ahead and leave it at that. That gives you an idea of what an episode looks like in a video editor. And so it's going to be up to you to get the images that you're looking for, get the video generation, download those, and then fit them into your editor and basically cobble it all together piece by piece. And you can use green screen. You can try to depend on the video generator as much as possible, but you might have to get inventive to get the results that you're looking for. So we'll go ahead and leave it at that. Thanks so much for sticking with me for Module 3, Anatomy of an Episode. We will see you in the next one.